Good evening, everybody.
Good evening. Good evening.
Good to see you tonight on this Sabbath evening. I know it's getting later and later now, so now we're at almost 8 o'clock when the Sabbath starts now, and won't be long before we start the program, and it won't quite be the Sabbath starting yet here anyway. But we welcome everyone watching, and you know, I know most everybody that watches live, and probably everybody except for maybe down in Trinidad and Tobago, is in the United States. I'm just curious if anybody from anywhere else watches the live program. I know we get a lot of viewers later on, but I'm just curious if anybody from outside the U.S. watches live. But just curious if you happen to stop into the chat room on LULICG.org and say something, that'd be great. All right, Dr. Ricks, if you would. Got to introduce the show, episode 287, How to Be Victorious in Spiritual Warfare. And there's an awful lot of that going on today. So, Dr. Ricks, if you would start us out with some jokes, that'd be great.
Okay. I know all of you were overwhelmed with the light bulb jokes. So here we go again. How many sadomasochists does it take to change a light bulb? 2. One to hold it and the other one to kick the chair off from under him. Okay, another one. How many feminists does it take to change a light bulb? 10. 1 to change it, 9 to form a Survivors of the Darkness support group. Now, this one is, how many tech, you call tech support, or you try to get them on the internet. How many tech support folks does it take to change a light bulb? Now listen carefully. We have the same light bulb here and it's working fine. Can you tell me what kind of system you have? Okay, now exactly how dark is it? Okay, there could be 4 or 5 things wrong. Have you tried the light switch first? See, I was at a big university, and you have to deal with tech people. That's just how they sounded. Not that they weren't right and I weren't wrong. Okay, this is the Bible trivia quiz. And we'll see at the end if anybody gets it right. Belshazzar, by the way, historians thought it didn't exist till they found evidence of it many years later, just recently. Belshazzar's feast had a hand right on the wall. Many tinkle up parson. What was the interpretation of those words? Okay, now for another joke. This is one of the grumpy old seniors, and the senior says, you know that little thing inside your head that keeps you from saying things you should not say? Yeah, I don't have one of those anymore. There must be some advantages getting old and crusty, right? It's stuff that you couldn't when you're young. Because we look so young, no one would know we're senior, right?
Yeah, exactly.
That's the funniest joke of the night.
Okay, this one's called Shipwreck Survivor. On a balmy day in the South Pacific, a Navy ship spies an island, and there's 3 little huts on the island. They send a boat, and they said they find a man who's been stranded there for 25 years. And there's only one man. They said, well, why do you have 3 huts and there's only one of you? He said, well, one was for me to live in and one was for me to worship in. What's the 3rd hut for? I used to go to that church.
good.
The schism among religions is almost that bad. Okay, today we're going to talk about how to be victorious in spiritual warfare. And we're starting off with saying we believers are in a serious struggle against Satan and his demons, part one. We hope to have, I believe we can have 3 parts out of this, at least 2, but I believe 3. There's a lot to be said. So we're going to look deeply at that whole issue of spiritual warfare. And we are locked. The devil is not locked in the bottomless pit yet. He's still here. But God says we have to use God's strength because God is the strongest. We have to know how to mobilize God's strength to be able to win this battle. And we believe we're in a life and death struggle, at least as far as our spiritual life goes, to win. So we have to figure out how to use God's help. Let's look at our first slide, please, Ken.
All right, Ephesians 6:10. My brethren, be strong in the Lord and in the power of his might. Put on the whole armor of God that you may be able to stand against the wiles of the devil.
And that's what we're going to be looking at, that we are in warfare, spiritual warfare. And I wonder how many people realize we have to take, let me put it this way. There are times when you talk to some church people, you wonder, are we really taking this battle seriously? What are your
I
thoughts?
wonder sometimes.
Sorry, go ahead, Tom.
I was just going to say I wonder that myself sometimes. You know,
Dr. Ricks, hold on a second. Dr. Ricks, could you turn your speakers down because we're getting a lot of feedback through your speakers into your mic?
Okay, we'll turn them down a little bit. Okay.
Is that down? Is that down?
Okay,
All right.
how's that sound?
Let me check. Yeah, I can't hear myself now. Tom, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
that's okay. No, I was just going to say I don't think we remind ourselves enough that we are fighting against dark forces, spirits, demons, whatever you want to call them. And we need to remind ourselves in our groups that more often, not that we need to preach Satan all the time, but we need to, at least maybe in the beginning or ending of the sermons, we need to remind people of that.
Yeah, take it seriously. And I think Satan is clever enough, I guess it's probably everyone realizes that if you lean one way or you lean the other way, Satan will try to deceive you in the direction you're most inclined to go in.
Well, he knows our weaknesses better than we do.
He's been watching you since the day you were born. And he for some reason, I think that the demons, they can tell, they can look at you before God calls you, and they see that the potential for being called is there. They can see something, and they start putting things in place to try to mess that up before you have a chance. And then they know what you did when you were 2 and 3 and 7. They know, all those things. They keep record, and they've been doing this a very long time. So it's a pretty easy game for them to try to get into your head and cause you to harm, spiritual harm.
And I believe this is true. I guess everyone's unique, but they may be able to bring other people around you to try to influence you in the direction they want you to go.
Absolutely.
And you think it's the other person is doing it when some spiritual influence is encouraging them to do it.
Absolutely. My neighbor one day looked at me and said, "Do you believe in God?" I said, "Yes." And he started screaming and cursing me and went completely nuts. So, I said, I want my theology from a schizophrenic alcoholic. And I walked off. And the guy across the street was standing next to me. And so we walked off together. I said, "That went south really fast." He says, "Yeah." I said, don't you believe in some form of a deity?" And he says, "Well, absolutely." I said, "I bet you everybody in here thinks of some kind of a deity. Why did he pick on me specifically?" And for years, I've gone and helped him. I've mowed his lawn and brought him, when he was in the hospital, brought him his mail and made sure that his house was taken care of. And just one day, Do you believe in God? Yes. I mean, and he snapped. Now, he's been living next to me for 13 years. He knows every Sabbath I get in the car and go someplace in a suit and tie, right? But and yet he's still friendly with everybody else, refuses to talk to me, won't wave to me. The other day he stood in front of my truck, so I had to drive around him, you know. Why? Why did he decide to pick on me?
Does make one wonder. Those are the kinds of things. And Paul uses the military metaphor about armor, that we have to develop that protection that God provides for us. Let's look at 2 Timothy 2, Ken.
Okay, let's try that again. That wasn't good. There we go. All right. You therefore must endure hardship as a good soldier of Jesus Christ. No one engaged in warfare entangles himself with the affairs of this life, that he may please him who enlisted him as a soldier.
I'm thinking to myself, what would one of his biggest strategies want to be? He wants to pull us back into the world, and not that we're out of the world, but I think you know what I mean. As far as theology and other activities, he wants to pull us away from God, lure us back into the world, and I think that's his big strategy. And Paul says, you know, if you're a soldier, you have to do your duty, you know, stick with what you're supposed to do.
I like the way that was written, because here's the deal. When you're in a firefight, you're not thinking about, oh, I need to put gas in the truck when I get home. You're thinking about right now. What do I do right now to stay alive, to protect myself? And I think the way he wrote that was a good way, because, you know, when Christ said, for the day of the Lord is at hand, and it's 2,000 years and he's not back, it was at hand for those people at that time. You're being judged now, you know. So what are you doing right now to make a difference so that you can finish this battle?
You know, sometimes I think we need to take these metaphors a little more serious than maybe what we do or what we have, because they have a real, I don't know, because it means what it says. And I think sometimes we think of spiritual as less than reality in the here and now, and we should. I think we should really think of it as an actual physical, it's spiritual, but more tangible thing as the armor, putting on the armor of God.
I think a lot of people, when it comes to the supernatural world, they don't believe in it. I mean, that's the worldly view. They neither believe in God nor Satan. They only believe in evolution. And that's dangerous, to not believe in the supernatural world. It's there. We just can't see it.
It's interesting you said that, because I have a Jewish family, man and woman, and they're very educated. He's an anesthesiologist and he was a surgeon at one time. And we were talking about martial arts because they're my students. And they always come in, you know, and give me a Shabbat Shalom or a Chag Sameach or whatever, you know, especially on the high days. And they're very nice people. And she was stretching and she says, well, you know, it's really simple. I mean, don't you believe in evolution? And I thought, why are you going to the synagogue every Sabbath and wishing me Chag Sameach and all that stuff and eating clean, eating very clean, when you believe you evolved? It was just confused me to say I believe I evolved and I'm doing all this to worship something that's not there. You know, when my neighbor got upset with me because I believe in God, I told my other neighbor who's still talking to him, I said, listen, tell him I'm going to pray to nobody for him.
You cannot merge evolution and religion, or Christianity. If you believe in evolution, then you don't believe you were made in the image of God. And therefore, everything is null and void. Because if you're made in anything, you just happened.
Well, there's many Jewish people don't there's some that don't even know what the Sabbath is.
Well, these people, they're at the synagogue every Sabbath.
No, I know. I'm talking in just general terms.
Yeah. Oh, I know.
If you're taught from the time you're born and raised that you are part of the chosen people of God, and there's, that's just the way it is. I mean, think of the attitude they had in Christ. They said, well, we're sons of Abraham, as if we've got it made and there's nothing we can do about it. Well, if you believe that, then you really don't worry about too much on how you conduct your life. God's already chosen you.
And the way Paul writes these things, it's clear he doesn't feel that, no, just coast. You got it made. You don't have to worry about a thing. These words do not, that Ephesians 6 armor of God section does not give you that feeling. And as I was saying, the thing about evolution is evolution says life is just an accident, one accident after another. But, if you actually study things, accident or randomness creates disorder, not more and more order. To get higher and higher levels of complexity requires programming and planning and intelligence. And the more they learn about life and all the internal cells, DNA, RNA, and they got some new things now, that shows an unbelievable sophistication in programming. And that's no accident. But we need to realize there is a God. And by the way, I'm going to talk about the whispering enchanter for a minute. The Hebrew word translated Nakash, could also be translated whispering enchanter. And see, most people, when you think of Satan, you think of, in the Garden of Eden, you think of a snake wrapped around an apple tree. But I think I'm not saying I know exactly what Satan looks like, because when you read those descriptions of cherubim angels, one of the top three, with their 4 faces, it's a little confusing but the way the Bible describes it, Satan is glorious and was beautiful and bright. And actually his good looks and his power went to his head. So I know we always think the devil is a weird, ugly creature with spiked horns on his head, but that wasn't really it. I really believe when he approached Eve in the Garden of Eden, because Eve didn't find any of the other animals threatening, even bigger animals like hippopotamuses and bears and lions. We assume Adam named them, they're all peaceful. So here comes what probably looked like an animal with maybe the wings folded in and his human face facing her, and he could talk. Eve didn't think anything strange of that. And I think the devil is an enchanter. He is a charmer. And we don't think of the devil as a charmer.
Well, I think that she interacted with different angels consistently, and that it wasn't always just God or Christ, I guess I should say, that was there. That there were probably times that other angels went down and showed them things and interacted with them. So when she came across this angel, and he seemed nice and was a whispering, sweet voice, a mesmerizing voice, he seemed so nice. Why not listen to him? A lot of these predators that they arrest, they say these guys can turn the charm on and anybody be comfortable, taking a ride with them, and then he snaps and kills them someplace. But they say that these guys are just very charming and warm and make you feel comfortable around them. That's what they said about who's the guy they killed right here in Florida. I can see his face. I think it's Ted Bundy. They said he was just charming. I saw some interviews with him. He seemed like a nice guy.
Well, the most dangerous predator, well, I'm putting Satan in that category, is someone who's charming.
Yeah. If you think about it, if Satan looked like the images that we've been fed, she would have went screaming into the forest or something, running away from what Satan actually wants people to think he looks like, so they don't know he's coming.
Yeah, the word Nakash refers to snake-like, but only in terms of the sound. And it says hiss. So it's not referring to the appearance of a snake, it's referring to the sound. So he probably, I'm sure, didn't look anything like a snake at all. And he was probably a very beautiful being. And like David said, he spoke a good line and she fell for it.
Yeah, and you realize that Genesis is just a condensed version, probably memorized by Moses of what happened. But I'm sure Satan probably said quite a few things. Things like, God doesn't want you to know everything he does. You're just as smart as he is, and probably played to her vanity. You know, they say if someone's going to con you, they flatter you.
And probably working on her for quite a while. This probably was, I mean, the Bible, it reads as a few minute thing. This probably took quite a while, maybe over days, weeks, months, who knows?
The reason I'm bringing all this up is the devil really hasn't changed. He is not going to deceive this world and us by approaching us as something scary and evil, but as something attractive and fun. Let's look at Ezekiel 10. Look at a little bit of things about the cherubim that Lucifer was.
All right. Ezekiel 10. Each one had 4 faces. The first face was the face of a cherub. The second face, the face of a man. The third face, the face of a lion. And the fourth face, the face of an eagle. And the cherubim were lifted up. This was the living creature I saw by the river Chebar.
So when he was in captivity, God gave him a vision of his throne, and the cherubims, and Lucifer, Michael, and Gabriel are the top 3 angels. I don't think Lucifer has that title of cherubim anymore since he was thrown out. Let's look at Luke 10:18.
All right. And he said to them, I saw Satan fall like lightning from heaven.
Now that's Christ talking. So he was kicked out of that cherubim, but I still believe he's very charming, very persuasive, very powerful, and very clever. And he saw that man was made in the image of God. And I think they are jealous of man and determined to undermine us. Let's look at 1 Corinthians 6:3.
Do you not know that we shall judge angels? For how much more things that pertain to this life? If then you have judgments concerning things pertaining to this life, do you appoint those who are least esteemed by the church to judge?
And also there's another verse in Hebrews that both of those together tell us that mankind is going to outrank angels when we get into God's family. Well, Satan, I'm sure at some point realized that, and he went to the Garden of Eden, and his goal is to try to undermine us. And he's working at it, unfortunately. And I think he's smooth talking and clever. Let's look at 2 Corinthians 11. Just want to focus on how a lot of the deceptions of the devil are clever.
All right. For such are false apostles, deceitful workers, transforming themselves into apostles of Christ. And no wonder, for Satan himself transformed himself into an angel of light. Therefore, it is no great thing if his ministers also transform themselves into ministers of righteousness, whose end will be according to their works.
No. One of the greatest criticisms of religion in the world, and although religions have done good things, especially Christianity for the world, let me say that again, but religions have been part of wars and other problems that mankind has had. And, you know, those who don't like religion can say, see, religion is bad for people. And I would say that's because the devil has gotten in there. I'm trying not to name any specific religion, not to upset people, but you take your own guesses. If you study world history, religions have been a part of the problem. And I think part of the problem is when a group of people, and they have their religion to tell them it's true, feel innately better than other people, can they use that to justify bad behavior?
Well, you know, Christ didn't make a religion. He just simply told us how to live our lives and how to worship God. He didn't say, this is my religion, this is my new dogma. He simply came back and said, you know, do all of these things that Moses taught you with love. And this is how you live your life. You live it with love for your fellow man. You live it with love for God. And when you do that, you will obey God. There's no need to tell you don't steal and don't murder and don't lie. If you love God, why would you do that to his children? And a previous point, you know, Satan was the most beautiful of all the angels, but he don't look like us. We were made in the image of God, and that's got to be a kick in the gut to him, because every one of us, the worst looking dude you know, looks like God. We look like, you know, we're made in his image. So everywhere Satan looks, we keep reproducing more and more of this image in his face, and that's got to be very difficult. That's why he so loves abortion.
Yes.
Because there's another little mini God-looking thing, just another one. It's innocent and it's pure and it's beautiful and it's harmless, and that's all things that he hates.
I don't know all the details, but a little bit of good news. Illinois was in the process of passing, I don't know all the details, some harsh abortion law, maybe moving in the direction of New York, where they don't call it infanticide, but that's what it ends up being. You know, if the baby pops out alive, which a lot of times apparently does, they kill it or let it die, same thing, really. 15,000 anti-abortionists showed up in the state capital of Illinois and shut down the state capitol. And that's my wife clapping for it. And they didn't, at least not today, at least, they didn't pass the anti-abortion bill. Now, maybe I don't understand the bill. It depends on which politician you listen to. Maybe it wasn't going to be all that bad, but the fact that the anti-abortion people are still very active in this country, and you never hear anything about them.
In Chicago?
Springfield, Illinois.
They must have bust them in. I can't believe there's 15,000 in the whole state.
Well, I think in Southern Illinois, there are a lot of anti-abortion people. I'm not going to say for sure. I know where that came from.
I wasn't being fair, but no, you're right.
I'll be honest with you, I don't know the details of the bill, because politicians are deceptive. You ask them, were you really going to end infanticide? No, we're just respecting the rights of the mother. You see how clever that is? Very clever.
Mm-hmm.
It's like that comedian that says, you know, dolphin safe tuna. And the tuna says, how about tuna safe tuna? And it comes down to tuna ain't cute.
Well, that's very true.
Yeah. But I do believe Satan and people who work for him and his demons will come across as being over spiritual, and in some way, shape, or form, anything they do is done for the good of however they want to word it. They're not going to approach us as, I know there is some evil occult people out there too, but most of them are going to approach us, they're doing the good for us. Like that old story. A guy comes to the government and says, I'm here to help you. And then you get worried.
You
Yeah.
know, a neighbor told me that the police came to my business twice on Wednesday. I had gone to lunch. And I said to them, I said, well, they know where I live. They can find me if they need me. I wasn't nervous. So for whatever reason, they haven't been back. But if they needed to talk to me for something, they can find me. But most people, when the police come knocking on the door, you know, a couple of years ago, a female cop walked in and she said, I'm looking for David Overstreet. And I said, oh, he just left. But I said, she wanted to get information so that if there was damage in my business, she could let me know. When she was leaving, I said, could you do me a favor? And she said, yes. Call me before you come next time and let me know why you're coming, because nobody wants to get arrested. And she thought that was funny, and out the door she went. But the government comes knocking on your door, it's generally not to help.
Yeah, that's what Reagan said. The scariest words in English language. I'm from the government, and I'm here to help.
Yeah, audit your taxes or whatever they're going to do for you. I think the devil pushes, but from a self-righteous point of view, a culture of death, euthanasia, abortion, the elderly and the preborn, as well as ethnic cleansing. All those horrible things came out of the same basic worldly philosophies that were big at the beginning of the 20th century. And those people thought they were doing good for mankind, by the way, with those horrible things. And you will see, I guarantee you, if leftists get more power in our government, they're going to start pushing euthanasia on elderly people. They're going to start saying, it will cost healthcare system a lot of money to give you this. Why don't we give you a nice little pill and you can go to sleep?
Yeah, I think it was Ezekiel Emanuel said that it's not reasonable for someone over 50 to expect a hip replacement. Well, who under 50 needs one?
And I know we need to improve probably access to healthcare and all that, but I want to keep my personal freedom. If you want an operation and you can afford it, do it. You may be 80 years old, but that's between you and your doctor. If you want to take the risk, do it. I know some government bureaucrat saying, and people, what about your insurance company? Well, one thing about insurance companies, I'm not saying it's easy, but they don't have total absolute control. You can pay for it yourself, or you can get another insurance company. Well, if the government's running the business, at least in many countries, you have no alternative. They say no, and you just die.
I was at the store today. The lady in front of me appeared to be an illegal. She was talking Spanish to everybody, and she was paying for a lot of food with an EBT card. And the girl rang it up, and she hands her receipt with her stuff. And all of a sudden, she turns around and says, "You didn't give me a receipt." And she said, "Yes, I did." And she said, "No," she got loud. "You didn't give me a receipt." And the girl goes, "Ma'am, I did give you the receipt." And she got louder. "You didn't give me." And finally, I said, "It's in your hand." She looks down. She goes, "Oh," and she walks out. And I said, I don't work here. I don't work for anybody, so I can just speak my mind. I know you can't. I said, somebody's getting free food, needs to be a little bit nicer. And the girl behind the counter went, "How was your day, sir?" And she can't say anything. I said, we're giving it to her. She needs to be nicer. And she said, well, she's just trying to keep track of what's on the card so she can refill that card next month. But, when they're in there and they're filling up their buggy with nothing but corn or nothing but bottles of water, and they're selling that on the back of a truck and coming back with their EBT card, and we're filling it up for them again, this country's lost its mind.
By the way, according to Tucker Carlson stats, 75 to 80% of illegal aliens get some form of welfare. See, we're told they come over here and they're hardworking. And I mean, I'm sure that's true of many. They're taking advantage of the system. And I could talk more about our political paralysis, but nothing's going to be done about the problem. It appears America's going to suffer. We just too dumb to see it. Well, some of us are too dumb to see it.
The reason I brought that up is because Satan is the most subtle, and the subtle way that they have got here, and it's not subtle anymore. They're coming in tens of thousands. But if we break God's laws, He says that He'll give our country back over to the other people. And we have turned so far from God with the abortion, with the gay marriage, and all the on and on and on. We're just being invaded. And He's given the land to another nation because there's no reason to give it to us anymore. We've turned our back on it.
Yes, that's so true. And by the way, I'm not against immigrants or poor people getting a break and people needing help. It's just that you got to get control of the things or they're going to get out of control more and more. By the way, I was just handed this. I know I didn't get it quite right. The two abortion bills, maybe there's some sub bills as well, that got blocked was parental notice for abortions had been put in Illinois a few years back, and it reduced the number of abortions significantly. This bill was going to eliminate parental notice. So you could be a 13-year-old girl and sign up for an abortion. Your parents wouldn't know anything about it. That was blocked. Also, another part of the bill would overturn virtually every regulation that exists on abortion clinics. They could, their standards could be as mean, as sloppy, dirty as possible. They didn't want any, and that was also blocked by the good people of Illinois. And I think that's at least the one thing that sometimes we forget. There's still a fair number of reasonably decent people in this country. They just don't get any media coverage. I bet you will not hear about that anywhere in the media.
No, they haven't asked me my opinion yet either.
No, I know what you mean. Yeah.
Tom, what is
Never
it?
get to me.
I think you know.
Yeah.
It's sort of like the few times I've been called for jury duty, guess who never gets put on the jury?
If they call you for jury duty, all you do is ask the person sitting next to you if they know Jesus. Have you found Jesus? And they will walk you out of there very quickly.
Yes.
Remember the Bible. I'm going to do some light reading.
And I think that the devil loves the culture of death. And so we're going to see a lot more of it. We can only hope that America has some more good years left before the things get out of control. That's my hope. By the way, the spirit world dominates world governments. We're going to look at Daniel 10. And in Daniel 10, Daniel is fasting and praying for Israel to return from exile. And even though the story is about Daniel and his prayer, almost as an aside, we learn some interesting things about the spirit world. Daniel 10:11.
All right, Daniel 10. And he said to me, O Daniel, man greatly beloved, understand the words that I speak to you and stand upright, for I have now been sent to you. While he was speaking this word to me, I stood trembling. Then he said to me, do not fear, Daniel, for from the first day that you set your heart to understand and to humble yourself before your God, your words were heard, and I have come because of your words. But the prince of the kingdom of Persia withstood me 21 days. And behold, Michael, one of the chief princes, came to help me, for I had been left alone there with the kings of Persia.
As I understand the story, Daniel was, they call it the Daniel fast. He was fasting for 3 weeks. First day of his fast, God answered his prayer and sent him an answer to that whole thing about them coming out of captivity and the rebuilding of Jerusalem and the end times. Some of the greatest prophecies in all the Bible that actually prove the Bible to be true are going to be delivered to Daniel. And the angel who's bringing it is blocked from reaching Daniel by the prince of Persia. Now you realize that the prince of Persia is not, in the context, it's not really just the human being who's the prince of Persia. It is a spirit being who runs the Persian Empire. And this angel is battling with the prince of Persia and has to call in one of the heavy-duty angels to help him break through to Daniel. Now, if there is an eye-opening scripture, that's one. And of course, then he delivers the message to Daniel. But wow. Isn't that a shocking scripture when you think about it?
Something I've been thinking about, as it talks about in Revelation, the 4 angels who are locked up on the Euphrates. If you look at all these major battles that we've had, these really gory, bloody battles, they're in Basra and these cities all run along the Euphrates. So I find that interesting that maybe these very powerful angels are causing what they can through human people there. Just an interesting thought about them interacting with us, as you just read here.
Well, what this verse you talked about brings us all to, we should think of this as real. I mean, people like to, I think they step outside this and they look in at it as if it's a story or a representation. But this is how hard it is for an angel to get through. How hard is it going to be for us to battle on our, on our own? We need help. We need help every day to get through the spiritual battles that we have to endure. And this just shows that even an angel needed help.
And in a way, the angel who runs the Persian Empire is telling the good angel, hey, this is my turf, stay out.
Right.
He's running the Persian Empire, and this powerful angel from God comes and he's trying to keep him out. Now, he doesn't thwart God's will, but he slows things down. That tells you that the angels are running the Persian Empire. Let's go to the next verse, because we'll go through 3 or 4 verses. I want to talk about the influence that the demon world has on world governments.
Daniel 10:20. Then he said, do you know why I have come to you? And now I must return to fight with the prince of Persia. And when I have gone forth, indeed, the prince of Greece will come.
Now, that scripture shows you, because there's the Babylonian Empire, the Persian Empire, and then the Greek Empire. The Greeks, with Alexander the Great, took over very quickly the same territories we call the Persian Empire territories. And that includes the Euphrates and all those, bad river valleys that you were talking about, David. That shows you the angels are at least involved in the changing of empires from one demon group to another demon group. And they probably all have different personalities. So as the Greek Empire takes over from the Persian Empire, you remember what Paul said, but against principalities, against powers, against rulers of darkness of this, our current age. And our argument also applies to our age. Those demons didn't just go away because the empires changed. As one man said, if the demons were encouraging Hitler to do the final solution, when Hitler lost, because God didn't allow him to win, those demons didn't just say, oh, well, we're going to retire. They went to the communist empire and other places to cause, the gulags in Russia, cause more trouble. They're still around doing whatever they can do. Let's look at another example, Tyre, which was like the mercantile leader and empire of the ancient world. They did all the control of the trade and money in the Mediterranean. Let's look at the next scripture, Ezekiel 28.
All right. The word of the Lord came to me again, saying, Son of man, say to the prince of Tyre, thus says the Lord God, because your heart is lifted up, by your great wisdom and trade, you have increased your riches, and your heart is lifted up because of your riches. You were in Eden, the garden of God. You were the anointed cherub who covers. I established you. You were on the holy mountain of God.
You mind if I interrupt you, Ken, for a minute? Just leave that up there. At first, and you'll see that in several places, they're talking about the human prince of Tyre and how he's, happy about all the riches he's got and his power. And then in verse 13, it switches to the Garden of Eden, and obviously that's Lucifer, who is the real power behind the Prince of Tyre. And anyway, I just thought that's interesting, that shift.
Mm-hmm. Okay, you were the anointed cherub who covers. I established you. You were on the holy mountain of God. You walked back and forth in the midst of fiery stones. You were perfect in your ways from the day you were created, till iniquity was found in you. Therefore, I cast you as a profane thing out of the mountain of God, and I destroyed you. O covering cherub, from the midst of the fiery stones.
Satan has been demoted. He's no longer a cherubim at the top of God's angelic government. But he's ruling, there's Tyre. Let's look at the example of the king of Babylon. The same thing we're going to see in Isaiah 14. Same principle. Starts with the man and then shifts to the power behind the man.
That you will take up this proverb against the king of Babylon. How you are fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, the son of the morning. How you are cut down to the ground, you who weaken the nations. For you have said in your heart, I will ascend into heaven. I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. I will also sit on the mount of the congregation on the farthest sides of the north, and I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will be like the Most High.
Yeah, Satan wants to be God, and of course he revolted. And that's who is really, so we've looked at least 3 historical examples: Tyre, Persia, well, and the Greeks in there, and Babylon. And behind each of those empires was a specific high-ranking demon with his own personality. But one thing is true, even though they might be different a little bit, the empires are different, they all want to weaken the nations, to drag mankind down with some form of decadence. We can extrapolate, and I think this is logical. Those demons haven't gone away. They still run the major governments and or sections of the world today.
Mm-hmm. When I was reading that, just kind of a side note. I noticed you said in the north. Notice all the Norse gods are from the north. Just an observation.
Yeah, interesting. And Thor and some of those other guys have, I guess now they're cartoon characters from Marvel Comics, but they had at one time pagan mythological street creds. I guess that's the word for it.
If I could maybe make a couple of comments in terms of how we perceive angels and Satan. And we started the program out, we talked about how we maybe don't emphasize how often we are fighting against these spiritual forces. I believe angels have personalities just like human beings. They were all created individually, I believe. I believe that may even have the ability to repent if they so choose. And otherwise, why would we be told by Paul that, don't you know that you're going to judge angels? If all angels were automatically guilty and couldn't maybe come back to the right side, why would we need to judge them? They would just be all automatically guilty and toss them off into the... But anyway, I believe Satan wants followers too. God wants us to follow him. I believe Satan wants us to follow him as well. I don't think he's out to destroy all of mankind per se. I believe he's twisted enough in his thinking that he believes that he might be able to be successful if he tries hard enough. And if he is successful, he wants to have some of us following along that we can worship him because he wants to be worshiped. And so, when we think of these beings that we're fighting against, I think we need to realize that they're not robotic creatures that just got carbon copies stamped out. They're intelligent beings who have resided in a spirit world. They don't know anything about what it's like to be a human being, just as Christ, or the Son of God, didn't until he became a human being and lived through all of this, and then now understands what we go through. So maybe that'll help people when they start thinking about what they're fighting against, realize they're really fighting against a being that has an ability to comprehend and to formulate ways to work against us.
Here's one thing that I've thought of. I have 2 examples. When I left the American border to go into another nation. The moment I crossed the border, I sensed a spiritual change. Now, it could be all in my head and just me saying it, And I remember on a bus ride in Europe, we crossed from a particular nation into another particular nation, and I felt that not as strongly, but I felt like there was a spiritual sea change from one country to the other.
It's the same feeling you get after the last great day. If you're still in the hotel and you're still there and everybody's gone, it's the same feeling you get.
Yeah, there's places you can go, and it's like when the one and only time I've ever been in New Orleans and went to the French Quarter, I felt so uncomfortable the entire time I was there. I just wanted to get out of there. And I think it's because there was so much evil present in that area that the Holy Spirit within you senses that and makes you react to it. I think we've all been in situations like that.
Have you ever been to Mardi Gras?
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think there are places, this may be stretching it a bit, but I think America's blessings, and maybe some other countries as well, are not purely based on the Protestant work ethic and how hard we work. I mean, that all helps. But it's like God has allowed an atmosphere that allows for blessings in this country, much more so than other places where demons are allowed more bad influence. I think some of the blessings of Abraham spiritually are still here. Not as much as they could be or should be. You could always argue we could be better and we get more blessings, but don't you get that feeling? Because like I said before, you can take somebody from, I don't mention, no, they probably wouldn't mind I mention it, like India. And these people are smart and clever. They come to America and they do great success. And you ask them, well, could you have done this in India? They say no. There's something about whatever's going on over there that won't allow the people to get, I can't explain it. They can explain that part better than I can, but it's like the atmosphere here is better for freedom and prosperity.
You know, it says in Deuteronomy 28:9-10, it says, and I'm paraphrasing this, but if you obey my laws and whatever, the people of the world will know that you are called by my name and they will fear you. But they said that by the time Obama left office, they were not afraid of our military anymore. They were laughing at us. It looks like that's turned around a little bit now. But because we started pulling so far away, that's my opinion, that they were not afraid of us.
Well, when you drop thousands and thousands of flyers saying, oh, we're going to bomb you in a few hours, it's hard to fear that.
And then you don't do anything in most cases.
Yeah, we're going to bomb you, so y'all might want to clear out so we can bomb you.
I guess we'll have to see how everything goes, but it does appear that ISIS was yesterday, ISIS's last village was destroyed. Now, I heard this on Christian radio, so I don't know if anybody else has heard it. There's at least one major leader of ISIS who now wants to convert to Christianity. And a bunch of them have said they were wrong and want to come back to European and American countries. You don't believe it, right?
No. Somebody over here will believe it, though.
That one of them wants to convert to Christianity. Now, is that just because they've lost?
Yeah, considering the same people who used to stick children in cages and light them on fire, I don't have any sympathy for them.
Well,
they can lie. They can lie to get to their enemies.
Yeah. Well, at any rate, I think that's a great victory, and our media isn't talking about it. Probably no one even knows it. That ISIS is gone. I mean, there are probably some scattered terrorists like other organizations here and there. But as far as they had a big nation the size of, was it a little bigger than Ohio at one time with their own school of terrorism and a bunch of other stuff. And I guess they had the second biggest city in Iraq and some other places. And the Iraqi army was scared spitless of them. And now they are gone.
Oh, by the way, do you know what you call a baby ISIS fighter?
What?
An icicle. Okay, where's the laugh track?
Yes, where's the laugh track? I mean, just think about it. If this were 4 or 5 years ago when ISIS was at its prime, I would not have thought ISIS would be gone with hardly any American casualties. Actually, no combat casualties. I think they did a couple terrorist attacks recently where they had somebody blow himself up in places where some Americans were, but no combat casualties, hardly any at all. Isn't that hard to believe?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know, that guy, Jeff Dunham, the ventriloquist, he has Ahmed, the terrorist, and it's a skeleton with rags on him.
Mm-hmm.
He says, Ahmed, what happened to you? And he says, oh, bring your child to work day.
Well, anyway, we will look more at Ephesians 6 in part 2, and we'll try to get in some details of things we can do to strengthen ourselves, what Paul said. But as we close the program, I want to just look at Acts 7:60. I believe there's something to be said here for a good Christian attitude.
Then he knelt down and cried out with a loud voice, Lord, do not charge them with this sin. And when he had said this, he fell asleep.
Remember, Jesus Christ said when they were attacking him, he said, forgive them, for they know not what they're doing. In other words, I believe what these scriptures and others prove, that a lot of evil that's done, not just the crucifixion of Christ, which maybe was the biggest, but a lot of other evils were done because demons encourage people to do it. And it's not people that are enemies. They just look like they're our enemies, but they're really being used and manipulated by the demonic world. So if you get persecuted at some point in your life by someone, it's probably not just them doing it. They're being encouraged by spirit beings to do it. So you don't have to hate them. It's somebody else is encouraging it. Now, they don't know that they're being encouraged by an outside power. Of course, I don't think anybody knows that, but they are. Because remember, Christ said, love your enemies. And that's such a wonderful thing. Any thoughts, Dave, on when someone persecutes you, we should put the blame on the spirit world and not so much on that person?
Well, it's difficult to love your enemy who is, harming you. I'm reading here about Stephen being stoned while we're talking, and that's an incredible example of how we should be. I know my personality; it would be very difficult for me to be that way. And we had some neighbors give us a hard time before the feast this year, a real bad time, and threatened us physically. This guy down the road did, and I said to Sandy, let's try to take that scripture. It says, when you pray for your enemies, it's like heaping hot coals on their head. And I said, let's pray for these people. Pray that they leave and sell their home, win the lottery, and move away and buy a mansion, and we never have to see them again because they hang out with the rich and famous. We came back from the feast. Both houses had a for sale sign in the front yard. The one was gone in 3 days. And I said, with my natural instinct was just, punch this guy out. But I shut my door. We went in. And I said, let's pray for them. It's difficult to do. And I used to drink vinegar all the time. That was easier.
That's a great story. I might borrow that story, Dave. You prayed that some good thing would happen to them and they would move.
We literally said, help them win the lottery so that they will have everything they ever need, and they'll move out of our neighborhood and get a giant home, and I'll just never see them again. And when we got back from the feast, there was a for sale sign in the yard, and it sold in 3 days. And it sold, I think, for more than they asked. So,
wow!
I'm glad they're gone. The whole neighborhood's glad they're gone. But
God really answered your prayer, didn't he?
Well, the other guy bought 40 acres up in Tallahassee, and he's having a house built. And as soon as it's built, he's gone too. So, you really do need to pray for your enemies. And if you like the president or not like the president, you should always pray for the president. we get who God thinks we need, and pray for him. We were talking about the one party is so against everything he does, they want to destroy him, and that's not right. They should be, if they hate him, they should be praying for him.
Yeah. I mean, they can vote against him in the next election, and they may very easily win. I think they will. But in the meanwhile, I actually think there are people, and I've heard some talk, who will try to undermine the economy that has hurt the average American worker, just so we'll have a change of parties next election. Or they love to undermine the Korean war talks just to hurt the president instead of praying for world peace.
Yeah, he I just lost my train of thought. No, but it is very difficult to pray for your enemies, like Dave was saying, and even whether you like them or not, it is difficult to pray that someone you think may or may not be harming your country, no matter who they are. But you know, that's something we all should do to try and, if you're praying for the best outcome, there's not much better you can do.
Yeah, and if it helps somebody you don't like, so be it.
Yeah, I always try to pray for someone who doesn't like me or is doing some harm to me or whatever. I always try and pray and ask God to change their attitude.
Yep,
and make them see, you know, what they're doing. You know, don't call a curse down on.
No.
Yeah, God's gonna kill you.
Yeah. The other comment I want to make is, when you're looking at people and talking to them and dealing with them, you know, there's a lot of character traits, obviously, of Satan and God, but I think two that seem to come out in the Bible to me are on God's side is humility. When you see a humble attitude, that's a Christ-like attitude. When you see an arrogant attitude, that's a satanic type attitude. And you'll always know who you're dealing with when you see one or the other of those.
Yeah, that's so true. So very true. And I think I look at the Nero example. Nero persecuted the Christians, you know, as a cover for his whatever problems he's caused in Rome. And not only did it not hurt the growth of Christianity, Christians, when being attacked and martyred, were so loving to their persecutors that they won over so many people by the way in which they handled themselves from being persecuted, that Christianity grew by leaps and bounds. It's almost like they loved them to death. I mean, if that makes any sense. And maybe they realize that Nero, there's a possibility Nero was a type of the beast, that Satan got to Nero. You read about some of the things he did, you wonder if Satan didn't get to Nero. And so the reason he did those evil things, you really could blame the devil, but it doesn't matter. God used what he did to promote the growth of Christianity. Isn't that amazing?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's a woman here recently in this area, or Dallas-Fort Worth area, was arrested because she was taking her 4-year-old daughter, and I don't know how else to say it, but pimping her out to old men for them to use her however they want. I mean, think about that attitude. I mean, what kind of a person could do that to their own child?
Was she getting paid a lot of money for that?
I really don't know all the details, but I'm sure she needed them for drugs. That's why they do it most of the time. But I couldn't imagine. I mean, I just couldn't imagine.
There's a lot of evil in the world, and I know we can't see demonic possession or influence, and you can't differentiate between sometimes a person that's a maniac and spirit possession, but it does make you wonder, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
I think you can detect it when it's manifested into physical acts or a human being, and how they it manifests through them. Yeah, I think you can sense it, or you can feel it.
I visited a mental hospital, and I won't go into details, but you could hear people screaming in the background, weird things. And you just knew some of those people had to be demon possessed. And that was a hospital for the criminally insane. So they were all locked up in, cages and iron doors and all that. But even still, it was creepy.
My friend is a sergeant in a psych prison. So when they deem that they're not stable enough for regular prison, they go to his prison. And I've known this guy, I don't know, 25 years or something. He's a real good guy. And he told me one day, he says, Dave, the only answer is, he used to tell me about, angels and demons and talk religion to me. He says, the only answer I have is that there's got to be demon possession. There's no other answer for what goes on with these people. And he tells me the things that goes on in this prison. There's no other answer. I mean, one flew over the cuckoo's nest is nothing.
Oh yeah,
it's bizarre to the point of there's no answer other than that they've got to be demon possessed.
It used to be you could pick up people, hitchhikers, and help people out. There's so many mentally unstable people that I just wouldn't encourage anybody to do anything like that anymore.
No, definitely not.
Well, next week we're going to look at this more in detail. We really encourage people to come back next week to hear the details of what we're going to go through. I think it will be worth your while. I just want to say one more thing about Jesus Christ. I think that when Jesus Christ said, forgive them, they know not what they're doing, he was also saying that those people, back then in 31 AD, that he was absolving them of guilt because they didn't really understand the world-shaking significance of what they were doing. They were being deceived by the demon world, including that mob that the high priest all stirred up. We had a church member lady who's passed away now, but she used to say, when about demonstrations of mobs, he said the word is demonstration. Demonstration. And so I really believe that that's why we can forgive people. That's why Christ could forgive them.
Yep. That last verse we read, just a little piece at the end, it says he fell asleep. You notice it didn't say he didn't waft up to heaven, or he didn't, it's not in the verse, but
That's why they're protesting.
Mm-hmm.
Go make it the loosest in America. Abortion, getting so many abortions is behind. That's why
Somebody also sent me this message that Illinois was going to loosen all the rules of access for abortion to make it maybe the leader. By the way, our states like Maryland, I guess California, and New York, where people come from out of state to get abortions, it's like a little industry because they allow them to run wild. I mean, that's my opinion. The Illinois wanted to join that list of states. Think about making money off killing babies.
that's pretty low.
And you ought to listen to a guy called Alexander Hamilton III on American Family Radio. It's like 89.3 FM, it's low FM dial. He gets all fired up over it. He says, don't kill the babies. You got to listen to him. And he says, believe me, there are churches and all kind of orphanages. They will take care of the babies. Because once it's out of the mother's body, what difference does it make to her?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, you can take it to a fire station in most places.
Yeah. So there's no reason to kill the baby or neglect reasonable care so it will die, within 5, 6, 7, 8 hours. That's just another way of killing it. Wipe the baby off, give it a little something to drink, and whatever all that other stuff they do, hold it a little bit. That's just terrible. And I know the devil must love that kind of thing.
you talking abortion now.
Abortion. Now, if I used the wrong word, I meant the devil loves abortion.
Yep.
And infanticide.
Well, if that's it, and we don't have anything else to bring up, I'll say thanks to everyone for joining us. Make sure you tune in next week. We give you more of this same subject, and have a wonderful rest of your Sabbath.
Good night.
Good night. Thank you, Ken, Tom, Dave, and Wise.
We're happy you could make it. So glad you are here. And hopefully we've been able to make God's word more clear. Until next time, may God be with you in everything you try. But for now, till next week.
Hold it. We forgot something. You didn't give the answer to the trivia question.
Oh, you're right. What was I thinking? Answer to the trivia question. Meanie Tinkle Upson. Okay, the answer to the trivia question is, you have been numbered and finished, Tinkle. You are weighed in the balance and are found wanting, up Farson. The kingdom is divided and given to the Medes and the Persians. By the way, many is you've been numbered. So that's what it means. You've been numbered, found weighing in the balance, and your kingdom is given to the Medes and the Persians. Thank you, Ken. Somebody probably put that on the chat line, right?
Oh yeah, it wasn't me. It wasn't me. It was one of the people in the chat room. All right, let's finish this up, and we'll say goodnight again.
Good night.